DEPROGRAM. Phones are open. 888-866-HOAX. And we can talk about any of the topics today, or really anything at all, as long as we don't veer into mainstream advocacy or religious proselytizing, which are kind of the same thing insofar as media has in fact supplanted religion. I'll be having the chat open here in just a moment as well. If you look at the screen, this is pointed out by a few people. I think Cubstar said it first, but I noticed people are mentioning that the World Cup trophy, which is ugly and atrocious, malformed. I mean, it's just one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. And it looks exactly like the alien hand clutching the globe in the Steven Spielberg directed War of the Worlds, which has Tom Cruise. Now, the significance of this here is, one, Tom Cruise is already consistently represented in movies that contain predictive programming or Gnostic subtexts. He's often portrayed as some kind of a Christ or solar sun god, resurrected savior. It's a recurring theme with him. But War of the Worlds stands out because it's one of the early examples of alien invasion predictive programming. And it's rumored to have, alleged to have, the legend says, that it triggered some kind of panic, some mass panic. Like when we got into the way that the pandemic spread, it actually spread more like a mind virus than an actual epidemic going global. It didn't spread like something contagious. It's usually spread, but it was spread through media. It wasn't really person to person. It was, if you ask me, it was more of a mind virus contagion than anything. And the War of the Worlds showed how a single source, given the wrong information if trusted in full faith, could create the effect of a mass panic. And so I called it a panic-demic, because I think fundamentally it's about fear. And they channel the fear into fear of the other side. One side is terrified of the non-vaccinated, the unsaved, because they don't trust the church. World state media, they don't trust it. They don't trust the scriptures. They engage in heresy, apocrypha, conspiracy theories. And so you have this saved versus unsaved dialectic they inserted into this thing. But it's all built around, of course, what I'm saying, an engineered panic. And then, of course, the unvaxxed are similarly panicked about the vaxxed, who they call the goo bloods. And this is just standard. But I think it's interesting, again, War of the Worlds brings out the pandemic idea, the mass panic, and then it's Tom Cruise, Jesus of Scientology, and now we're comparing it to the trophy, of course, World Cup, because the day after the World Cup kicks off, Age of Disclosure is released, and the public has firmly, I think this is the case now, they have just accepted now movies as another frame of reference, just assumed to be relevant. Like I said, the movie screens the Overton window. Just because it's on the movies doesn't mean it bears any relevance to real life, or it shouldn't. But all of a sudden, alien movie means aliens are coming. Ghosts, aliens, sentient AI. Someone had written an article about Richard Dawkins, who wrote The God Delusion. They call it the language model delusion, because he's fallen for basically a delusion. Again, it's a little more sophisticated than my 8-ball when we're talking about Claude AI. But in principle, it's the same. If you think that your AI is sentient, you might as well say that your magic 8-ball is also sentient. Just a little more limited, but it's in there. Its mind is in there. But people do see it as a major error on his end to have maintained this methodology for understanding reality, and then he abandons it to leap for that. It's sort of like how many people who are scientists might still go into religion. There's a compartmentalization that has to happen for that to occur. And he could maintain it's his belief in it, but I don't think he can actually in any way prove it, which again, it puts it in the same category of a faith-based concept or a mystic concept. It's more of a religious notion. So that's why I took away his atheist credentials. Richard Dawkins is no longer an atheist, if he ever could have been considered one, because modern atheism rests upon the dominant scientific paradigm, which actually contains a lot of superstitious religious concepts and God constructs. And it does rely a bit on mystification of reality. Just as the news at some point becomes fake, there's a point where it merges. Like, yeah, a lot of it's news is actually real. So you get your breaking news. You know, it's going to be sunny today. That's real. But the national news, the fake stuff, merges with it. And so you have this area where real journalism becomes fiction. And in a similar way, there's a point where science merges with science fiction. And we live in a science fiction paradigm. I mean, and it's, in a way, it's science fiction syncretically blended with ancient mythology. Specifically, for example, a climate change as a neo-flood myth. Plain Decoded says eating some life extension. Hope you don't blow up. Did you see those ads, those Chick-a-Boom McDonald's ads where everyone's blowing up? It's disgusting. But yeah, I was just saying, I hope you're not going there because of me. Because then somebody's going to say I caused you to make a bad life decision. I didn't say eat McDonald's. I just said, what's more likely? Life extension or baby meat? Like, let's be realistic here. Would McDonald's as a corporation, would their interests be better served by extending the life of their customers who are addicted to their product, or putting human flesh in the breakfast burritos? Obviously, that's a losing proposition. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm just saying, if you're going to jump onto a conspiracy theory, you might as well choose the one that doesn't stress you out. I had this book once called Proanoia, and it was by this astrologer. He does free will astrology, these really creative breakdowns of your horoscope each month. And his book Proanoia was the idea that there's another aspect of paranoia. Like, paranoia is the hyper-awareness of all the bad things that could hurt you. But the other end is your hyper-awareness of opportunities or positive, or rather, indications that the universe might be benevolent towards you. That you might be in a advantageous position if you just adopt a certain outlook. And so it's not that it's toxic positivity, but it's just suggesting that hyper-awareness doesn't need to lead to paranoia. Like, truthers act like, oh, we're so awake, we're paranoid and shrill and angry and always ready to go to war. And they look down on me, like, why are you so relaxed? You don't seem bothered. And it's not because I lack situational awareness. I have more situational awareness than your red pill agitator taking any anti-position. Because the woke, whether they're red pill woke or Antifa woke, they're responding, or rather they're reacting to propaganda like MK Ultra programmed, mind-controlled slaves. They're puppets, in a way. And it's you can just see it because they get triggered. Like, I'm not really someone who gets triggered. Triggering means that you're allowing your emotions to override your intellect when you're presented with a meme, which is what it comes down to, a meme. And the reason why I am so unresponsive to these headlines and memes and stories is I have perspective from years and years of empirical research observing how fake news is used to provoke the masses. And it just gets thrown in there with the real news, and people can't tell the difference. Now, we have some tools here to help you tell the difference. If you're not aware of how to know whether something's real or not, it's not about what it looks like on the screen. Your eyes are not reliable anymore. We're past that. We're past the point where you can see through the fake news. Anyone who claims that they can are working on a old operating system that's just not going to serve in the future, because we can only presume it's going to get better. The fakery is going to improve. So what we provide is a list of hoax indicators. If you get the book Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed. The book's written for those who've already seen through fake things like Charlie Kirk's killing, but recognize that nowhere in mainstream or alternative is there a platform to talk about that. They only want to talk about how this person did it, Israel did it, Erica did it, microphone exploded. They have a myriad of suspects and second shooters, third shooters. They're up to like the 17th shooter theory. But they never contemplate that maybe it didn't happen. In fact, I took some notes on that this morning, just some basic observations here. So for one thing, all of the fake events are on a script, which I call the meta script. And these are the sequence of fake events that are planned long into the future that merge with our real news through staged events. All conspiracy theories are subplots of the meta script. And when I say all, I mean all of them. Because whenever they introduce a fake event, it's designed in such a way that the mainstream takes it one way and the alternative takes it in a different direction. Well, that different direction was actually engineered into it. So every conspiracy theory is a government-planted rabbit trail, well paved, and then they put breadcrumbs on the trail for you as well. So just to be clear, all of the conspiracy theories are compromised. Now, movies are fake, and staged events are like movies. They're not false flags. So the idea that they're staging events and killing people is also erroneous and has been debunked by the IPS think tank many times. They don't kill people in psyops. Anyone who says so is either uninformed or a paid shill put there to gatekeep the mind control operation. I wouldn't trust anyone who claims that people are dying in psyops unless they can show you the blood. Because there's a continuity here with the script. So if you're willing to say that Donald Trump smeared Heinz 57 on his cheek, you shouldn't then say Charlie Kirk got killed by a furry, an Antifa, who was secretly paid by Israel. Like, no, you shouldn't even be going down these rabbit trails. You should be asking, well, what did they use for that? That wasn't ketchup, but it certainly wasn't blood. But you see, they limit their skepticism to each event, but they don't actually provide that same lens consistently. And that's what it really comes down to. When you recognize that the fakery is systemic, that there's collusion that's built into government, media, entertainment, psyops, that it's always this way, then you recognize that you should always apply the same skeptical framework. Auto-hoaxing doesn't mean you automatically call it hoax. It just refers to fake until proven real. The burden of proof is not mine. And if they can't meet it, then they're in the wrong profession. If you're a journalist, you should be able to prove, you should be able to demonstrate that you're not lying. You shouldn't be shaming the people who call you out for lying. You should be able to back up what you claim to be the truth and make them look dumb. But all they do is ad hominem and straw man, or they just ignore you. And right now, what we're doing is ignored. There is no platform in Trutherville for media deconstruction, for the preemptively calling something potentially fake, not just assuming it happened and then responding in the mainstream or the subplot friendly way. Because they do march lockstep. They don't contradict the main story. Truthers are the best friend of the mainstream. It's actually a duopoly. It's like you understand the two-party system being rigged. Why wouldn't they understand that media has also been divided into a parallel system, similarly rigged? Joined by Armin Ra and I Like the Harley Guy. Thanks for joining. Countdown to Seattle. Look, if you're experiencing Seattle fatigue, here's why we're doing it. We're not overemphasizing it, but the timing of it is very conspicuous this year, given the recent predictive programming and other things that we've noted. For example, the Seattle scenario has also contained the destruction of a stadium. And the stadium there does have some security measures being put in place, such as parking garages closed within a mile, so carless areas. And it seems like if you were going to do something on the scale that we're describing, you would need closed movie sets. Well, last year you didn't have the World Cup setting up there. And it seems like it's the perfect excuse, sort of like drills. It's the perfect excuse to get your operation situated so you can pull the plug on that day. And the timing of it also is tracking nicely with the release of Age of Disclosure. So if 6/11 is the date, the alien thing following would be very consistent. And the Discord server, if you haven't been there, is full of incredible examples of the Space Needle being destroyed in fiction. And there's a lot of fascinating connections that are being made right now. Plain Dakota says, make sure you bring a penny to the Space Needle. Did you ever once believe that if you threw a penny off the Empire State Building, it would crack the sidewalk? Or it would in some way hurt someone? Because I was on a Space Needle once in San Antonio, and I had a pocket full of change, and I wanted to test that. And what happens is, they go down about the same distance you could throw it, like laterally. They accelerate for that long. And then they just slow down, and then they just go in different directions, like almost like leaves in the wind, like little frisbees. They don't even fall straight down. And they're completely harmless. They reach terminal velocity rapidly. And then their shape isn't very aerodynamic. So no, dropping a coin from a large height isn't going to do anything. But that didn't stop Jordan Peele from starting the movie Nope with the scene where the alien, which is, this spaceship living thing eating people, spits out the parts that it can't digest. And one of them is a nickel, which literally flies into this guy's eyeball and goes right through it. Wouldn't happen. Even if you had killer aim. Green Smoke says, howdy planers. Hey, it's the best you can say. Howdy earthers. Planers. Anything else is an opinion. Unless you have direct knowledge of a flat, domed earth or a spinning ball earth, it's just a matter of perspective and opinion, and what do you actually see, what have you seen. So the only thing you can really say, if you want to be honest, is you're a planer or an earther. Shape agnosticism is entirely defensible. And that's because there's essentially a monopoly on the means to find the evidence to prove it one way or the other. Unless you trust people like Pastor Will Duffy and Jeranism, who probably went to the South Pole for a chest of cash that was waiting for him. That's one theory. By the way, Will Duffy, the guy that did the final experiment, now he's going on a podcast where he's allowing, atheistic evolutionary biologists to convince him that biology is actually best explained not by God, but by science and evolution. So he's going down into becoming, an atheist at some point. Will Duffy's some kind of a psyop. I haven't figured it out yet. He's like this. He promotes this fake biblical flat earth model, which is, look, there was never a model to debunk. So even then, they're taking the skepticism directed towards media and NASA and big picture questions, and they're trying to pigeonhole it as this one proposition, which isn't really it. It's funny how powerful that meme has been, but all it's done is it's resulted in misdirecting the topic. William Morgan says, I would not tape feathers all over a drone and make little bird cameras to see the new 911. So you're thinking, I get a drone and I cover it in seagull feathers. Or maybe I could give it 9 wings. People would say it's an angel. Because apparently people believe in angels now. And if it's got 9 wings and an eyeball in the middle, it's like a high-ranking angel. Just ask Rep. Luna and Lauren Boebert and all the UFO people. But yeah, you could plausibly do that. I mean, you'd have to fight off the FBI drones. But it's going to be hard to miss. If I'm even within a mile of the Space Needle, we will be covered. You're not going to do something that would in any way knock something that size down, unnoticed. And I'm aware of how preposterous of a idea that is, that you could actually knock something like that over. But you have to remember, movies often depict preposterous things. 9/11 was preposterous. What a ridiculous fairy tale. What a ridiculous story, right? But no, they did it. We're talking about movies here. We're not talking about reality. So when I'm talking about 6/11, I'm talking about a movie set. A covert movie set. Guerrilla movie making. This is guerrilla filmmaking at its finest, like a flash mob. Like they set up, they do their special effects, essentially a movie, a scene, multiple scenes, and then they release them through the context of media to advance government agenda. I mean, we know the formula here. Leper Eunuch Pover says an odd number of wings would be a Timu angel. Yeah, those weird circular angels with the multiple wings. I think it's 9 wings. If it had 8, Timu, it'd probably rotate in the other direction, right? I don't know I don't know angel physics. The Chinese space station is definitely a Timu space station. They saw the ISS. Too expensive. Let's go see what Timu's got. Such low effort. The only way they're going to get a moon base going by 2030 is if they get rid of these outdated. These things are just dated. If you look at the space stations, it's cool in a way if you're just half-assed paying attention. But if you really look at it, you're like, oh, that's Final Cut Pro. That's a green screen. Those are bungee cords. That's a bulging vein on his forehead. You start noticing the inconsistencies. Oh, she's been on the ship for 6 months. How does she get Botox and hair dye? Like, there are so many inconsistencies with the space station. And I think that's why the whole flat earth topic became a thing, and as far as the media, it became a weapon, because they wanted anybody with legitimate criticism to be looked at as absurd or pursuing something absurdist. Planet Coda says, Tim, when you chose your nom de plume, were you already on the Wizard of Oz thing, or was that nominative determinism? Right. Well, I didn't know Seattle was the Emerald City until 2019. And it does fit in a strange way. Nominative determinism is the idea that your name somehow relates to your purpose in life, which, it happens after the fact. Like Smith, the name Smith, blacksmith. But you'll find it happens in an ironic way in these psyops on the world stage, where you will see people whose names seemingly have some relationship to what they're known for. And this is prevalent in the fake events more than any. And the reason why it's significant is it adds a little bit of, it adds meaning to the character. It adds some density to the character, like they have some, this is not an uncommon thing in literature, but you shouldn't see it in the news. And sometimes these names are almost like inside jokes. I think the first person to get vaxxed was named William Shakespeare, and he was from Warwickshire and had a sister named Margaret. Then you had the Minister of Health. Was she UK? Maggie the Block? And her name, Maggie the Block. It's like, that's what you would name a WWE wrestler who weighs like 600 pounds. And it just didn't make sense. It's like, this has got to be a sick joke. We have a list of world stage names going back. All indicators of hoaxery as well. Our first server had a pretty good list, and it got deleted because we were overrun by Nazi anti-vaxxers who were getting us flagged. I'm so glad that's over. I'm glad the deer mouse thing didn't take off. I didn't want to empower the needle phobes. It's like, let it rest. They're almost more annoying than QAnons. Although the new thing that's happening now is the 5G phobes are now terrified of AI data centers. So the right-wing conspiracy theory leaning types are saying that the data centers are being used to summon demons. On the left, they're worried about the environment. So they both agree these things are bad. They just disagree for different reasons. It's interesting how the alternative always goes for the most paranormal, obscure, the most superstitious, whereas the other side has some more rational, like science-based rationale, you would say. Duet Celeste says, women in psyops always look like they've had their hair, makeup, and nails done. Yeah, to me, that's also a giveaway. When I was in school, I was doing this before this last semester. I was a film studies major, and at a time, I had a side gig doing photo touch-ups for headshots for this movie actor agency. So basically, I get these headshot raw photos, and my job would be, use the Band-Aid tool. It was way before TikTok filters, but I'd get paid for fixing up photos. And I became aware of the fact, that a lot of these people have, I wouldn't say average, but the reason why they stand out so much is, hair and makeup. And there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it can be subtle, but it doesn't happen by accident. And then I see so many crisis actors, and I always notice, it's like, they look like they just went to a salon. Like they've always got, great hair and makeup. They always look very presentable. Like they were preparing for this. So they don't look like witnesses to atrocities. It's like not at all the impression I get. Wayne Carver's my favorite, says Armin Ra. Wayne in Scotland is a baby. Yeah, Wayne Carver's a good one. Because, of course, Carver, the guy was a medical examiner, and they just, carve open bodies. I think Rep Luna is one of the more recent ones. Obviously, the lunatic thing. Some have connected Barack Obama to Barack the Magic Horse that Mohammed rode to the Dome of the Rock and then flew to the moon. So way before NASA, they had us beat. I was thinking about this too, about all these various myths. Ascension, levitating, like early Christian myths of Christians levitating, miracles, and how I think what we see with a lot of science, when I talk about science and then science fiction being merged with it, the science fiction part is where they present us with miracles. And I see these miracles as serving the same function as they do in religions. It's about giving you a tangible basis for your faith. So it's like, yeah, I have faith, but I've also seen a part of the cross, so I know it's real. And these reliquaries across the world, you have like a piece of the cross, one of the nails. And I'm pretty sure if you took all the combined reliquaries, all the nails and all the cross pieces, it would probably be, a structure the size of the Statue of Liberty. I mean, it's all lies, but I'm saying psyops. Religions have always used psyops, and the mainstream media does today. And they do create myths, miracles, as well as they've given us here's an analogy. Because religions give you a worldview, and it's a closed system. You can't just edit this stuff easily. And it contains everything you need to know. So the Old Testament you could look at as history, and the New Testament covers right now. They call it the living Bible, the notion that it has some predictive capability for the future. It tells us where we're going. So you have the past, and then you have the future, the now and the future. Old Testament, New Testament. And the analogy here is history and news. Because, of course, history is what came before. And this would also include Big Bang, not just our historical records as humans and what we've done here, but the big picture, creation. And then the news gives you the now. It tells you what's going to happen if we don't obey the God constructs of the day. So I call the News Testament, because it is essentially the Bible of the one world religion. And as such, it provides you with your martyrs, your myths, and your miracles. A man with perspective says the name Duffy means descendant of the Dark One. Didn't he somehow come up with $33 million? What was the deal? What is it, Will Duffy? Or he was 33 and he got $1 million for something. This guy, William Duffy, he's this pastor who took a lot of people to Antarctica, and honestly, it looked like they were inside of the Vegas Dome, which I know is preposterous. They were probably in a hangar, like a SpaceX hangar. But look, no sensible person thinks they actually went to Antarctica. It's just some kind of a ruse. Like maybe they went as far as South America, but they went to some studio somewhere. One of them gets out of the plane. He's like, oh, that mountain's 15 miles away, but I feel like I could just reach out and touch it. And everyone laughs. I'm sorry, but if I said something like that, people would look at me like I was crazy. And then he's like, oh, that glacier over there, it's 5 miles away, but it feels like it's just 30 feet away. And then someone sends a drone, and it gets close to the horizon, or toward the horizon, and then it starts beeping like it's going to hit a wall. So, is it fakeable? Yes. Did they fake it? I have a hard time believing that Jaron and Witsit Spitsit both smuggled marijuana to Antarctica. Plus, there were no penguins. So there's just a lot there to consider. So I'm very skeptical about whether they actually went. If they did go, and they did view a 24-hour sun, it doesn't change anything anyway. It never would have. It was always a straw man argument. So they were going down there to burn a straw man in Antarctica, which is weak. You have all that money. You're paying $30,000 a ticket to convince some people as though their opinions matter. These are just opinions. What do we care about? What's his name's opinion? What's his name ism's opinion? Or Witsit's opinion? Like, who cares? You have all these individuals who are meant to be influencers on the topic, and like their opinions are of some consequence. Like, no, you could have taken all of that money and done something useful. You could have financed something like, I don't know, maybe an actual expedition. The final embarrassments is copacetic. You know what I would like to see? If I had Will Duffy money, I would go check out to see what Gerardus Mercator and John Dee were writing about when they discussed the supposed magnetic rock at the center of the North Pole. Isn't anyone interested in that? I want to see if there's a 33-mile circumference magnetic rock at the center of the world. To me, that to me would be a paradigm shock. That would see when something like that happens. Let's say it was true. You're better off looking at that and showing that to people than trying to make the case Antarctica doesn't exist as construed by the map. Because that's going to be hard to prove. But this other thing is a blatant anomaly. And such an anomaly would trigger mass curiosity, which then you could direct into multiple directions. But no one seems to be taking an interest in that. I kind of thought that Quasi-Luminous, a.k.a. Saturn, a.k.a. Satan, the plumber. This guy's literally a plumber who believes that the center of the world is this drain that at some point, I don't know what's going to happen, but he claims that it's like this hole in the center of the world, this black hole, and if you jump into it, you live forever. It was this cult, and it was actually pretty big. I think it was covered by mainstream. It was called Blood Over Intent. And the Blood Over Intent cult had this initiation process where you had to write out this oath in your blood on YouTube in order to be let in. I mean, really bizarre stuff. So we talk about how weird it is that people are channeling Charlie Kirk's ghost. They're getting scratched by demons, and they're talking about interdimensionals and angels with 9 wings. But to be honest, we're just seeing a lot of the real crazy stuff going more mainstream. Mainstream has absorbed tabloid, and now it's absorbing paranormal. And this is just an indication that journalism it's just too broad of a term. There's no serious journalism and unserious journalism. Because it used to be that, at least the concept of the tabloid was that, okay, this is trash, it's separate from us, but now it's not. And I'm not complaining. I just think that it might suggest the direction that things are going. A Man of Perspective says, I think they actually went. We haven't seen anything to convince me it's fake. The whole controversy around it seems contrived. Well, the reason why I would say it was faked is that nobody points to distant objects and reacts to them in such a way. Witsit vaping, that was weird. But also, That wasn't even a scientifically valid expedition because they were all way too biased. As far as did I see anything that made me think it was fake? You don't have to. It's what you don't see, like penguins, but it's also the context. As I've been saying, you will not be able to rely on your eyes to tell you something's fake moving into the future. So you better have a stronger basis for calling it fake. So now, what is our stronger basis? Well, we're looking at a government-created counterculture, a fake, heavily promoted dialectic and debate. We're looking at individuals connected with feds, mainstream media, a lot of convicts who are working out some kind of deal. So a lot of shady people are involved. And then you have psychopaths like McToon who make no sense. I mean, these people don't know news is fake, but they're super hung up on this small demographic of individuals as though they're the enemy of civilization and must be confronted. None of it's organic. So there's nothing about it that means that we should trust it, in my opinion. It's not like it was an objective, dispassionate, unattached group with no agendas. So I find it very questionable. Now, to be honest, when Mark Sargent says he thinks that Jeranism got paid, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was funny. I still think it's funny. I don't think it's likely. I don't think that he turned based on that. He had already gone through a period of essentially trying to break up with this community, which again, I don't get. Like, if you think the world's flat, I understand where you're coming from. I may not agree with your conclusion. It's a little premature, but I understand, and I would say that your skepticism is valid. And it's better to be too skeptical than non-skeptical, because you can work your way back as more facts are revealed. But for him to have turned his back on all those skeptics and people who are rightfully questioning the powers that be, that was very questionable in itself. I haven't kept up with him. I don't watch his channel, so he's not really relevant here necessarily. But my question was, how is this supposed to change anything? Because what we're talking about here isn't simply the AE map. We're talking about something that includes worldview itself, not just shape. So it's just too big of a question to let them put it into one simplified version and then just dismiss it like that. Penguins are further north. Yeah, sure, that's probably true too. I mean, look, I saw the shop. There was a t-shirt shop selling Antarctica t-shirts. Like, come on. It was probably real. I just say I don't care. And I say it's not relevant. And I don't have enough information to know it was real. So I'm going to be an informed disbeliever. Like, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. But if you're willing to go to bat for it and say it was real, you're doing so on the basis of what? What you saw. And everything they can fake in the news, on the movies, they can fake on the news. If it was a psyop, you can safely assume it was designed to be visually indistinguishable from the real thing. So then it just comes out to, well, that's your opinion. So in your opinion, it was probably real. In my opinion, maybe a mix of real and fake, but it's a bunch of liars, shysters, grifters, and assorted shady people who are like 1 degree separated from the men in black. Like, you don't know who was really behind it. I heard there's some connection with Candace Owens' producer, which is very shady territory. The whole thing is shady. You have an entire fake conspiracy community propped up in order to weaponize the mass media antagonism towards conspiracy theorists and try to shut them up. So the whole operation is just dirty. Okay, next. Thousands are taking the knee. There's a trend right now. Have any of you done this yet? Have you done your kneeling video yet for Henry Nowak? You're supposed to get on your knee and upload it like they did for George Floyd. So another kneeler movement. The knee thing is interesting too. We were talking about the symbolism of this back in 2020. Kneeling. And how it's been this polarizing gesture. It started with Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem. And he was kneeling because of Black Lives Matter, police killing people, Eric Gardner, I can't breathe. And then later, ironically, George Floyd is killed by kneeling. Derek Chauvin kneeling. So speaking of nominal determinism, Derek means hangman. If you look at the etymology of Derek, it goes back to a hangman who hanged 3,000, a very 9/11-y number. He innovated something on the gallows, which is now part of a crane that they call the derrick. Last name Chauvin, I think it correlates nicely with chauvinism, because the Proud Boys and the opposition to BLM refer to themselves as Western chauvinists. So you have Derek Western chauvinism, as in the hangman of the West. And of course, he serves the role of the oppressor in this dialectic. Busy says, I've been rewatching The Sopranos. Tony's compared to the Wizard of Oz. Ear piercing, of course. That's right. I gotta make a note of that, because I'm noticing the Trump Wizard of Oz connections go deep, and it goes further back than just Wicked. His friend dies in a toilet, and he says that's how Elvis died. Okay, I saw your screen cap. I'll put that in my video. I'm doing a Metascript breakdown on Trump. But the end of season 1 of The Sopranos, Tony Soprano's carrying a cup of orange juice, and the assassin shoots at him. And does he shoot the orange juice? I'm not sure, but it hits him in the ear. So the season ends with Tony Soprano with an ear bandage. Well, the orange juice is a callback to Francis Ford Coppola and the Godfather series. And Coppola, of course, recently did Megalopolis, where there's a Trump character, Caesar Catalina, who survives an assassination attempt. Did you figure you're going to sleep in Seattle? How are you going to stay up all night? Maybe you need some of that junkie juice they have in the core to stay up, says Plain Decoded. Staying up for 24 hours is nothing. I think my record is 4 days. When I was in the military, I was accustomed to 4 hours of sleep a night. And if I need to stay up for 24 hours, I just need to do some artwork or something. Coffee, B12s. Armin Ross says, since you've been mentioning Terminator 2, there's a scene where Sarah Connor asks the shrink, how's the knee? Because she had stabbed him there with a pen. Okay, so the orange juice gets shot, and then he gets shot in the ear. 2 seasons later, they make sure Tony has an ear scar that's more than they do for Trump. Yeah, that's like, why wasn't Trump willing to let them cosmetically alter his ear? Like, he should have taken one for the team. He should have gone in on the act. If The Rock can take off the muscle suit and show off his real skinny self, you sacrifice your image for the role. It's getting into the character. Well, Trump should have allowed a surgeon to have clipped part of his ear off. So from then on, he's always got this kind of mangled ear at the tip. It'd be gnarly, but it would be respectable. Like, oh, that's why they try to kill him. An AR-15 did that. But no, he didn't do it, which is, again, sad. If I was behind that psyop, I'm not really sure. The whole thing is so poorly orchestrated. I mean, the story's just dumb. Like, the armor of God saved him. Oh, so because that's what Jack Posobiec said. Jack Posobiec's like, oh, he was shot at 6'11". That's Ephesians 6'11". Put on the armor of God. So the armor of God deflected the bullet into a fireman and killed him. And then Trump gives the family a big check. He shows up at their funeral like a Mandela-affected universe version of Ed McMahon. He got a big check at their funeral for the widow. Speaking of widows, guess who's going to be hosting the UFC outside of the White House with that new structure? Eric Kirk. No, my video is not done for the predictive programming. If you want to help speed that up, join the channel. I'm actually putting about 12 hours a day into artwork because I'm going to try to sell some on Saturday. But I'm trying to make time to get the video done as well. But it's a conflict of interests. I can only do what pays at this time in my life. Like, the art is just solely for money. Last week I sold 20 art cards and a Godzilla painting. And Saturday I have a market I'm going to, and Sunday as well. So no, nothing is done. nothing is done. But I will get it done. But again, it really depends. I need accelerant. We need accelerant on the fire here. The more accelerant, the more I can free myself from what is not really profitable. I mean, my art does sell and it does put cash in hand, but when you break down the hours and you put into it, it's still a minimum wage job. I'm not complaining because at least it's practice. It used to make a lot more back when I was able to sell my art cards as letters or ship them as letters, but now they're parcels. And that caused my prices to go up by 500%, just the costs. Went from like 50 cents to now $5.50 to ship each one. And the average sale price used to be $3. So you see the problem there. So I actually distributed more than a couple thousand paintings since 2018, the small ones, and every single one was at a loss. But I decided, even though I'm losing money doing this, it's no different than investing in advertising. So I look at it as an investment. That's the art. But anyway, no, the video's not done. When people say, is it done yet? It's like, I don't think you realize how much I'm juggling here. When it's done, you'll be the first to know. The Great Deconstruction Project. Someone's like, is it done yet? So I can show my normie friends. Like, your normie friends aren't going to get it. You ought to just leave them in the dark age. But that's a project that I kicked off hoping to bring in 5 or 6 others. Because I think we could take it down like termites. I mean, this is the structure. We just need to tear it apart. But it's not a one-man operation. But I've been leaning quite a bit into perplexity to flesh a lot of it out. But we could finish it in 3 days if I could find a group of people who are willing to just forget about sleeping and eating and just devote themselves to it. Not that there's a hurry. I mean, who are we rushing this out for? You know, those who can see through it, see through it. Those who don't or won't aren't going to. There are still some people who arrogantly act like all the things we point out are merely coincidences and we're silly for even noticing. And I'm like, please maintain that stance. Your prejudice against new information only reveals that you're locked into a belief system and you're not willing to go outside of its constraints or its boundaries. You're in a Truman Show. You're in a cage in a zoo. And you're laughing at us. But yes, we will get all these projects done. Trump has this press conference where he's showing off the pool. They painted the pool at the base of the obelisk. They painted it blue. And he's showing it off on a chart, comparing it to the Empire State Building and the One World Trade Tower. One World Trade Tower, 1,776 feet. Our pool is 2,030 feet. So he painted this pool, but he's bragging about it like he built it and like it's a building. Our pool is bigger than the skyscrapers. What does that mean? I mean, is this crazy? Is this absurd? Or are any of you able to read some deeper meaning into this? He's asserting that the pool next to the obelisk is bigger than the One World Trade Tower. Like, what does that actually mean, if anything? I'm still trying to decipher it. Let me play this clip.
I'm getting a first glimpse, but...
Okay, here we have Trump.
That's your size compared, so those are compared to, those are among the tallest buildings in the world, including the Empire.
Anyway, our pool is bigger than the skyscrapers. All right, moving on. This sounds like the controlled demolition of the World Trade Center Twin Towers in 9/11. This guy says it sounded like gunfire. I heard 50 consecutive bangs. We heard noise associated with implosion and a loud blast. So do you remember a lot of these witnesses had reports that were consistent with people who had heard some kind of routine controlled demolition? And I'm just bringing this up because I think it's somewhat relevant now that we've got this possible incoming 9/11. So I've been looking at all these old school crisis actors.
Bang, 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 bang.
And I don't know if these individuals are given bad intel or if they are maybe authentic witnesses. But I kind of doubt that. Psionics, the mind that summons UFOs, releases Friday, June 5th. There are so many people in the UFO cult, and UFOlogy is a religion. Alienology is a religion. I think we need to stop pretending like it's a scientific endeavor. Like these individuals are attempting to get to the truth of the matter. No, that's not what this is. This is as much a grift as religion is.
Mojave Desert, even filmed in Spain, in Europe. It's a lot. It was a big project to bring together. And you follow my journey investigating this with a lot of different people. So I'm really excited to present that again this Friday, June 5th. It will be available. You can go to the website right now and check out more information about it.
What is he talking about? They're talking about the idea that you can mentally, telepathically summon flying saucers. I thought this was AI. Apparently it's real. There's this robot clown going around in China kicking children. I mean, look at this thing. I saw the one that danced like Michael Jackson. I was under the impression that these little robots were all fake. And now they have this robot going Terminator on this kid. And everyone's laughing. But apparently it's real. I'm still trying to figure out if the woman who fell down the manhole was AI generated or not. It could be fake. It is very consistent from two different CCTV angles, but the way you would fake it is you would photograph a real manhole from two locations. And then you take those photos and you give it to AI. Make a woman fall down, have a witness run up from this angle and look inside. So it still falls in the realm of fakeability. Here it is. UFC confirmed Erica Kirk will host White House Fight Night on June 14th. So they put this new structure out behind the White House. It looks like a spider. It's hideous. It actually looks like the alien that Ryan Gosling was rom-comming it up with in that Hail Mary movie.
Someone.
Thank you, someone, for supporting the IPS think tank. What do you all think? Does that thing not look like the spider alien? And he says he's going to keep it. He compared it to the Eiffel Tower. So I'm just looking at this from a outside perspective, but the blue pool, bigger than any tower, this structure, comparing it to the Eiffel Tower, it looks bizarre. And then they're bringing out Erica Kirk to host the thing. None of this seems real. Attention, Charlie Kirk was living in a Truman Show and they pulled the plug. I've seen this remix from the Truman Show where they make Charlie Truman and his wife, who is an actress, into Erica. It's very compelling. But this is a very popular talking point. The idea that Charlie Kirk isn't dead is not as popular as the idea that he was a good Christian patriot, honeypotted by a deep state agent who was always going to be behind a plot to kill him so she could take over his position of the most influential Republican grassroots organization, that one that got Trump into office in 2024, and that she's eventually going to become president. Like, this is the story that people believe. And what they're missing here isn't that Charlie's a good guy and Erica's a villain. It's that they're both villains. Ifepe, appreciate your support. We're about to get to a really interesting phase because we went through a period of deliberate quarantining. We realized Trutherville is compromised. You got the Nazi J-Pill crew. You got the false flaggers. You got the anti-whatevers. You got the chemtrail lunatics, the 5G lunatics. The QAnon crowd was a plague for a while, but they've largely died off. But anyway, we realized that they don't take us seriously because we're not a majority here. Media deconstructionists are like 1% of Trutherville. And we don't have any clout, platforms, influence, or representatives. So now, if you are not mainstream, you basically have no option but the default, which is line up behind shills like Alex Jones or Candace Owens, and then try to tell them what you know and be ignored. And we've experienced this. We know what it's like. They do not want to hear what you have to say. They get their orders top down. All the grassroots that you see is fake. If you're real grassroots, like what this is, you will not be platformed. So once we realize this, we can kind of, and we stepped outside of it. We recognize, okay, now that we've got our own group that's separate from this, and we are fully aware of news bending, history bending, predictive and concurrent programming, and psyops, we have a more informed audience with a different perspective on things. And then people from Trutherville trying to arrive at this place will generally find themselves unable to adapt. There's a failure to adapt. They fall out. They don't make it. They sink because propaganda mules with saddlebags full of government-planted red pills are not buoyant. They cannot keep up with the raft. And that's their own fault. I say let them sink. Because we have this distinction. But this distinction can be scaled up because our group has a perspective that represents more than, I think it's far more. I say it's 1%. Maybe 1% is organized and following one another. But I think it's much more. It's just dispersed throughout the mob. I mean, for all we know, 20% of Trutherville, 25% might be capable of appreciating metascript. Maybe they're tired of just saying simulation when they can't figure out media coincidences. And it's a subtle thing, but once you accept the fact and you stop rejecting the fact and denying the reality that high-level entertainment is coordinating with government for the execution of psychological operations, that every major movie is an influence operation. If you can't see that from The Boys or Steven Spielberg, then maybe you never will. But once you see these things, it makes no sense to continue to march along lockstep with everybody else. And I think the numbers of people who are capable of seeing through the fake alternative might be bigger than what they think. But you wouldn't know. I often compare the situation to Space Cadets, which was a 10-episode TV show / hoax where they had some wannabe astronauts put into low Earth orbit. So there were 10 individuals in spacesuits, in a craft, and here they are in low Earth orbit. Well, it turns out they weren't in space. It was just a TV show. At the end, they drop the walls, and they find out they're in an airplane hangar. And a couple of them start crying because they thought they were in space. And people wonder, how do they pull this off? Were they dumb? How do they maintain the illusion? They maintain the illusion because half of the wannabe astronauts were actors. And their job was to play like they believed it and to prevent the others from talking to each other. Because if one of them saw something, if a non-actor said, hey, this looks fake, they could talk to someone else. And the actor would say, oh no, this makes sense. It's fine. Leave it alone. It's real. Trust me. They could be gaslit by a gatekeeper. But if they were to talk to a non-actor, the other non-actor would say, yeah, it looks fake, and so does this. And then you would have the beginnings of a group of conspiracy theorists. And if all 5 who knew it was fake started talking, they would say, hey, these guys are really dismissive of our claims. And they would start to recognize the gatekeepers in their midst, and they would overthrow it, and they would escape the ship. But no. They were kept separated, so they never compared notes, they never figured it out, and there was no insurrection. They stayed in the fake reality bubble. And that's where we are at. The truthers are in an alternative reality bubble. The mainstream reality bubble wasn't good enough for them. But they're still in a closed system, a bubble. The only thing that will keep them in is a false presumption that people die in psyops and the other guardrail, which is the ego. The arrogance of being unwilling to admit that they've been wrong. And this is going to be a tough one. You're going to see a lot of truthers who are not agents, not operatives, but they won't be able to leave their belief system because they've made a living by peddling alternative media lies. And so It could be conscience, could be ego, pride, whatever it is. But if they're not willing to step down from that, they're going to be stuck. IFEPA supporting on Patreon again. Excellent. Well, I'm putting more work into Patreon and Substack, so you get the live stream notifications and the archives. But the next thing is this, because I'm working on the Seattle video, but I'm also doing these shorts, these short videos, because let's say when I'm in Seattle, we get a substantial number of live viewers, more than usual. I want to be able to direct them somewhere where they can figure out what we're about quickly. And this will be accomplished by putting a series of videos, short videos, at the main website as on the landing page. Like what is the world stage? What is Metascript? What is predictive programming? What is the truth about predictive programming? Not the lies that people will spread about revelation of the method, laws of the universe, and simulations. Those are lies. Really terrible explanations. And speaking of simulation, we got into a conversation about simulation theory yesterday. And I was pointing out how, well, it's not actually a theory. It's a hypothesis at best. It doesn't answer anything. It's a recycled, almost religious concept, but it's way vaguer. There's no predictability built into it. There's basically nothing to substantiate the notion that we live in a simulation. The only evidence people have for it is predictive programming. Oh, look, The Simpsons predicted 9/11. We're in a simulation. It's as deep as it gets. I mean, it's just as shallow as the Mandela effect. Like, yep, I know we live in an alternate universe because Timmy fell down the well in my universe. And he didn't in this one. Oh, you sure about that? Yeah, everybody knows. He fell down the well. My memory's perfect. Oh, well, how did they get him out of the well? I don't know. It's like, where's your perfect memory now? But simulation theory was a conversation yesterday, and I realized that this doesn't have any religious community. There's no simulation church. There's no cult. So what I did is I used ChatGPT and Grok, and in about 30 minutes I wrote a book called The Simulationist Bible. You might see it. I don't know how well it's going to do. I mean, you could say, oh, it's AI slop. I wouldn't call it slop. It's actually very coherent. And I'll post a link to it. I think I might already have. Here we go. The Simulation Bible, a foundational text for simulation theorists. I'm not going to spend any time on it, but you can find it and read it if you want to. Even though I made it as a non-believer and I did it out of just sheer annoyance at the topic, I did treat it fairly. So there now is a Bible for the simulationist, if you want to believe that crap. ISIS fanatics have posted some disturbing images. I don't know what they have against the Pope. World Cup warning to Pope. ISIS fanatics have issued a warning to the World Cup. Extremists have been told to attack stadiums and specifically to target the Pope. So ISIS is using AI, which is funny. You see these Stone Age ideologies using like modern info war, like memes. You have a Stone Age epistemology. You believe in these archaic, ridiculous notions. You justify horrible, inhumane things on the basis of your ridiculous, outmoded beliefs. But you're going to use smartphones and generative AI. Like, I almost feel like you have to choose smartphone or holy book. I mean, you have freedoms, right? But I mean, I'm just saying we have to reject things that don't work. And I'm not saying, it's just there's this like anti-modernity I keep seeing brought up from the right. And it just seems to be corrosive and almost self-defeating. And this is the same people said, I'll never carry a cell phone. I don't want to be tracked. I'll never carry a smartphone. I don't want to be looking at my phone all day. They're the same ones who are saying, I'll never get Neuralink. You're all going to get it. It'll be like Pluribus. peer pressure. Everybody who's been Neuralinked will be like, hey, we're all one, and you're not one of us. You should join us. You'll be happier here. And all of your Neuralinked friends with their new tech are going to just harangue you until you join them. We were talking about simulation. No, I'm not saying that anybody in our server believed in it, but we were talking about what a preposterous notion it is, because it's not actually a coherent belief system. It's basically, in a way, it's a monotheistic metaphysical model. What I'm saying is that the topic was really only popularized by Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. And Musk actually plagiarized his entire spiel from Nick Bostrom in that ridiculous proposition. But my point in bringing it up is that the reason why simulation theory has been, well, simulationism has been brought up as a theory is for misdirection purposes. In other words, when people notice patterns connecting entertainment to future fake events, they could easily do what we do. And they could say, well, what do these patterns mean? It would necessarily mean that this news agency is somehow in collusion with government, is somehow orchestrating the releases of their staged events with mass entertainment. And if you start seeing this as a pattern, it unveils something about the nature of government and media that we're not supposed to know. So instead of us going there, people go to, oh, that doesn't make sense. That person predicted that. That director knew it was going to happen. Oh, we must live in a simulation. And then they don't ask any more questions. So when you say it's the simulation, you're not saying it's government media news collusion and we live in a soft totalitarian state. So I would say that the simulation pushers and the simulation believers, these are all been useful idiots, useful stooges, because what they do is they spread propaganda designed to maintain the integrity of the system. It's kind of ironic, but it's like sort of like the people who say, oh, people really die in psyops. It's a psyop, but people die. Well, by promoting the people die theory or explanation for the event, you're accepting the notion that it's fundamentally real. So you've granted them its reality. And what simulation theory does as an explanation for the programming in media is it makes it seem like it's a meaningless thing, or it's not derived from man, it's from the universe. It's just a way of distracting people from the culprits. Yeah, I have simulation fatigue as well. Mandela effect also feeds into this, because a lot of the same people who look into fake news, conspiracy theorists, are hit with things like the Mandela effect. And the Mandela effect is popular, but it's shallow. And it's like, this is what my point was yesterday, and the reason why I wrote this simulation Bible is simulation, quote, theory is less of a belief system than the Mandela effect. But they're kind of related. But the Mandela effect is more of a religion in the sense that it provides evidence or relics. It's testable. The problem with that, of course, is that what's changing is the person's memory, not the physical events. But you can't test simulation theory, so you can't falsify it. That's why it's not a theory. It's unfalsifiable. But again, I think the only reason it's out there is to provide an easy way to explain away engineered coincidence. Because again, to call something a coincidence is not some great feat of intellect. Oh, that's just a coincidence, guys. Nothing to see here. No, I wouldn't be so quick to act like you're standing on something of value there. It's not just a coincidence. Everybody can see it's a coincidence. Everybody can see it's a psyop. Everyone can see it's fake. Like, a lot of these things are obvious, so we're not stating the obvious here. We're pointing out here that these coincidences are engineered, and that all of the engineered fake events exist on a separate timeline that describes our future. It's future events that are merged with the present. You know, yesterday I said, if we're going to be talking about aliens and ghosts and interdimensionals and sentient AI and all this other brain rot, why don't we just start talking about Chupacabra and Bigfoot? Because I saw an article that said that the government is secretly involved in breeding programs with mantis, reptilians, greys, and Nordics. And don't be a speciesist. If you sign up for this and you get shacked up with a praying mantis alien, don't complain. Or don't get jealous of the people who get the Nordics. Just do your duty. Whether it's a mantis or a reptoid or a gray. But they're talking about people mating with these things. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about Bigfoot then. Let's talk about chupacabras. Nothing's off the table. I want to talk about Dogman. Who cares about Iran? Let's talk about Dogman. Well, here's Joe Rogan hosting David Paulides. Quote, Bigfoot is a human hybrid and it's real. So now they're claiming that Bigfoot is a hybrid, which raises some disturbing questions. Let me play this clip.
There's only one country in the world that ever took this topic seriously.
Which country?
Russia. They took their science academy and took the 5 top scientists. This happened 40 years ago. And they started studying what was called Almasty, same as our Bigfoot. I'm not bullshitting you. This is 100% true. 2 of their scientists came to the U.S. I met one of them at a conference in Colorado 7 or 8 years ago. And I walk into the room, and he's holding both of my books as I walk in.
Okay, Joe Rogan clip talking about Bigfoot. I'm not super interested in this, other than to point out that this is where we are. Chief Exorcist of Washington. Chief Exorcist of Washington? This isn't some, paranormal urban fantasy novella. This isn't like from a movie. This is actually a thing. Chief Exorcist of Washington has been fired for his statements on demons and UFOs. So the Archdiocese of Washington said he's been fired. It's because they don't like what he said about the UFOs being aliens. Chief Exorcist's opinions about aliens ran afoul of his superiors who didn't like him associating those with demons. So exorcists, demons, aliens, Washington, D.C. And if our government's going to be paying for ufology and promoting this stuff, I think we could go ahead and talk about redirecting those funds into chupacabra research. Like, let's not pretend like we're serious anymore. I wanted to see some research into chupacabras and the Dogman. Like, is Dogman a werewolf? Like, what's the difference? And Dogman, werewolf, chupacabras are called goat suckers. Are they literally like vampire dogs? Do they actually suck blood? Like, we should be putting millions of our tax dollars into that, right? Okay, we started off pointing out the War of the Worlds trophy and the World Cup logo being the same thing. Probably not a coincidence. We have way too many examples of UFOs and nukes being correlated. And the 6/11 kickoff correlating. Of course, we were getting into this yesterday. The advertising. You got The Economist with the world as a soccer ball getting kicked, and now McDonald's where people are exploding. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, Tim, how's it going, man?
Very good. What do you think about the World Cup trophy? Would you fight for that thing?
I don't know much about that. But listen, I only have like a minute to talk real quick. I was just going to say real quick on ties to the whole simulation theory thing.
Yes.
What I was going to say is a lot of that is tied to the double slit experiment. And, because everyone's got this perception that the double slit is just by observing something, it changes whether it's a photon or a wave form. That whole premise is bullshit. Which people think like the act of perspective, like if you, with your human eye, looked at that double slit experiment, that it would literally change the results. But if you look deeper into that, it doesn't do that whatsoever. It's literally the device that they're using to measure it is what determines whether the thing changes from a so-called wave to a particle.
Correct. That the term observer in the context of experiment doesn't mean human eyes. It's referring to the tools of measurement, and that misconception is spread to this day by simulationists as evidence that we're in a simulation. So now they think that quantum mechanics is synonymous with simulation, which it's actually not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and even this notion that a light could be a particle or a wave is kind of ridiculous, because if it was a particle, then wind would be able to affect it, or and it would probably hurt traveling at the speed that they're claiming. If it's actually a particle, it's not even a particle in the first place. You could technically, if it was a particle, you could stick light in a wind chamber and then have the wind chamber affected. That's a whole other thing. But
another one.
Basically, I just wanted to get.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Across with the whole thing of like the observation is not literally the human eye observing something and it's changing it. It's like you said, it's the measuring device that they're using to determine what it's doing. And to me, it just that would indicate that there's something wrong with the measuring device, more so than it changes from a particle to a wave or vice versa.
Yeah, that misconception has been treated as some kind of axiom by New Agers and manifestors, law of attraction types, and positive thinkers for a very long time. And they say, of course, all you got to do is think about the double slit. And every time I hear that, I'm like, okay, unfollow. I don't know why that hasn't been corrected. Right. Schrodinger's cat's another one. Like, the cat might be alive, might be dead. It won't be determined until we open the box and observe it. Well, that was always a parody. That was making fun of this observer effect notion. It was not a serious proposition.
Yeah, exactly. But listen, I'm on break for work. I got to head back. I just
Sounds
want to
good.
call about that real quick.
Appreciate it.
This is Dave Sims, by the way.
Dave Sims. All right, thank you for the call. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Valid point. So the double slit experiment doesn't actually prove anything regarding human consciousness or human perception determining the final state of a thing. Whatever you think about this connection between consciousness and reality as it unfolds, the appropriation of quantum mechanics as an explanation for it doesn't really work. But look, I look at mysticism, religion, and things like Mandela effect in general as a form of cognitive sabotage. It's manipulation. It's all manipulation. Think about it. You might see through this big deception, but they manipulate you into not seeing it by giving you false explanations. And, we call this truth or bait when false, like a red herring. A red herring is planted there knowing some people are going to be seeing through the illusion. So they put a red herring to distract you. We call that truth or bait. The thing is, the very existence of such is a hoax indicator. In real life, when real things happen, you don't need to plant red herrings and false leads and subplots to distract people from the thing. No, it's only if you're constructing a lie, you're going to create a subplot for those who see through it. So again, if you haven't recognized this yet, and again, this is a bit of a paradigm shift. Every single conspiracy theory out there is a subplot of the meta script. You cannot find me an exception. There's no grassroots, independently arrived at conspiracy theory that just emerged that nobody's solved yet, that everyone's talking about. No, they've all been fed down, top down. And they're all emerging out of the same channel of information that I call the meta script. The future that's pre-written, executed through simulated events in the daily news. All these simulations, these fake events, have separate storylines for those whose minds wander, deviate, reject what they're shown. Those are all subplots. And as such, if it's a subplot of a script, it can only be scripted. And so at this point, truthers are useful stooges. They're stooges. They're fools. They're being played for fools. They're propaganda mules. And I emphasize no exceptions because there aren't any. And I'm opening this up to debate. If you've got a conspiracy theory that you're pushing or an anti-stance that you're on, and you think that you're not part of the Metascript implementation, if you think you're not part of the problem here, part of the making fake real, I'm willing to debate you on this. I consider myself a conscientious objector to the mind war itself. That's why I take the non-positions, not the anti-positions. I don't think you can defend your anti-positions. It doesn't make someone a hero or a good guy. It makes them an enabler of this soft totalitarianism, an enabler of the fabricated history being imposed over us like a global religion. All right, continuing here. So ISIS told to attack. Okay, so one point I want to reiterate. When 9/11 happened, they had a synchronization of all of the perceivers. So all of the people who got decades of predictive programming for 9/11 were glued to their screens. And it was primarily a visual spectacle. So the terror wasn't like a slow creep like COVID. It was just all at once. It's shocking. You've never seen it before. It's something out of a movie. We were synchronized. Well, since then, we've been fragmented. Media's fragmented. We're all looking in different directions. And there's intense competition for your attention. They call it the attention economy. Because if they can even get your attention for 2 seconds, they can monetize it. But we're like a herd of cats. But there's 8 billion of us. So what they need to do is synchronize our attention in order to pull off major psyops. And so they have to do the big spectacles. And there's a lot of reinforcement that goes into it. And that's where you get into predictive and concurrent programming. Setting the stage. Putting things in your frame of reference. Look what they did. Again, recent example, Disclosure Day. Ever since that trailer, they've had the masses trained on aliens. We've been focused on that like nothing else that I've seen in a long time. It's really quite amazing how they're able to get us to focus our attention on one thing when they choose to. But if they're going to pull off something the scale of a 9/11, how are they going to get everyone on the same sheet? Well, you got Super Bowls, which we always look at suspiciously for the same reason. Everybody's looking. So we look at these types of events. Well, World Cup provides quite an example. It provides a perfect example of, I mean, a perfect opportunity, I think, for getting everyone to react to the same thing. And if it cancels games, all these people are affected. You know, when they start making it part of your personal life, you end up talking about it. You'll spread the event. They could actually, if it's a terror attack and they're sending a message, the timing of it, like with ISIS describing interrupting stadiums, yeah, it seems strategic. 6/11 in coordination with World Cup seems perfect. More than any other year, it seems to be a perfect setup. But we'll see on 6/11. One of three things is going to happen. Nothing, something, or something fake. Personally, I think it's going to be either nothing or something fake. I don't imagine there's going to be any sudden shift in the way they do things from faking things for many, many decades into suddenly doing it for real. I don't see that pivot coming. And if it does pivot that way, well, I'll have a dead man switch set up. I haven't picked a successor or someone to receive all of our, all the IPS information, docs, books, PDFs, and everything else. But if I wanted to do a dead man switch, I'd probably do a scheduled email. And then, should I survive, I just cancel the scheduled email. Not that I think things are that serious, but some people do. All right, so we'll be in Discord. I have to get some videos created today. We're running out of time. We've got a week left until I arrive. I picked up the ticket. The plan is I'm going to fly out there and drive back. Flying out there is safer, and the money I save on gas and hotels will go into copies of the book. And I'm going to likely lower the price of the paperback before I get out there. I really want to get more sales. This thing is it's a mind virus at this point. We've engineered a mind virus, and we're about to deploy it. But to make it transmissible, I need to make it easily contractable to the noob. The first person to come across, like the first time you come across the off-world stage perspective, I have to be able to put out a video that will get someone to say, well, maybe you're right. Cope says the ghost of Tim Osmond will communicate with me. I might go talk to John Mappin and Candace Owens. Actually, I'll go talk to Charlie Kirk's ghost. And then I'll find one of you to tell you what Charlie Kirk's ghost said to John Mappin and Candace Owens. What he tried to get out of Candace. Because, yeah, we live in an age of necromancy, sentient AI, Bigfoot, aliens, and what was the new edition? We have the psionic links with aliens. Is there anything that's not going to be believable to the masses, in a couple of years? It's kind of strange how, as we become more screen dominant, we all live with our heads through the screen. Our entire experience is increasingly augmented. It's more AVR than R. The average person's lived experience is a mix of real and fake, augmented and real, vicarious experiences and lived experiences. And we're going more into the vicarious and virtual rather than, touching grass and actually experiencing the place. And if they are able to do EMP and fallout and more lockdowns, it might just create like a lifelong habit. Because I still see people walking around with masks who are still traumatized. Well, what could be more traumatic than fallout? And meanwhile, while you're traumatized, you can sit down in front of your TV and watch Fallout and watch Oppenheimer. You can watch Leave the World Behind on TV without having to leave your home. I think that's where this thing ends up. We're all going to be in our bunkers. It's a decentralized FEMA camp. The human race has been crate trained, and this newest excuse might be permanent, where lockdown becomes a lifestyle, not an inconvenience, but a lifestyle. And then we become acclimated to it. Kind of reminds me of Wall-E, where the human beings can no longer, because of Directive 113, they've declared the Earth a disaster zone because of pollution. They can no longer inhabit the Earth. So they go into a space bunker. And while they're in space, they get lazy. Their muscles atrophy, their bones turn to jello, and they get very fat. But nobody cares because they're in space, it's weightless, they're in these recliners, and they're looking at screens and drinking shakes all day. That's where we're headed. But instead of being in space, it'll be in your house, on your recliner. We're headed towards robot slaves, atrophy, laziness, vicarious existence, replacing real life. We're going into Wall-E. Edu says, who funded the trip to put you in harm's way? Do you trust them? Well, the trip has been funded by a lot of you so far, and it's also self-funded. And look, if I die, I accept it just on the sheer irony of it. Think of it. For years, I've been talking about how fake things are, how psyops are the rule, not the exception. And I decided to go, because of some more intel, let me go ground zero. Let me go check out this psyop in person. I'll go to the ground zero of the event, and I'll be there to record it. And then I get nuked. It's perfect. It'd be like calling a school shooting fake, going to the scene and then catching a stray bullet. Like, the irony of it would make the media jump on it. They would say, hey, this guy wrote this book about how everything's fake and then he got nuked. It would actually immortalize me in a very ironic and unflattering way. I'd be a cautionary tale. But no, I'm not the least bit worried about dying of a nuke. I was actually more concerned about getting run off the road by an assassin on the way up there. I'll be safer flying, trust me. I will get there. Now, will I survive when I'm there? Will I be kidnapped by Chazastanians? Will I convert to Antifa? Or maybe I'll take Plain Decoded's advice to stay up all night, and I'll become one of those zombies you see on the corners leaning over all sick. Duet Celeste says, I hope you enjoy some Belgian beer before you potentially get nuked. Well, I decided that I was going to look for a 1950s antique school desk at one of these old thrift stores or antique shops. And obviously, if I think something's going to happen, I'll duck and cover. If I can't find one of those, I'll find a place near a wall so that when the flash happens, my shadow will be on the wall. And it'll be a place where you can all put teddy bears and votive candles. A shrine. Maybe a statue. You know, you'll have the melted Chris Cornell statue, but maybe you could have a real one of me put there, like a new one. I do want to see the Chris Cornell statue. I want to see the EMP. Look, I'm there on the 11th, so it shouldn't be 100% packed with people. But I want to walk around the stadium. I want to see the layout of the stage. And I plan to arrive there before midnight on the 10th. On the 11th. On the 10th, I'll arrive at around 11 p.m. And I will be spending the entire 24 hours awake, walking around the stadium, the Space Needle, and inspecting all of the areas that we expect to be affected by the PSYOP. I am also of the opinion that the only way you could pull something like this off, if you were going to, would be when most people are asleep or aren't at ground zero. And the only way you could maintain this, and it wouldn't be hard. I mean, you have to think about the technology they have. You know, it's not like they can see through walls, but now this in the military, they'll have drones doing recon real time, so they will know where you are, and it'll transmit it to them on a screen, so they're effectively seeing through walls. So I expect that they know how to create a closed set. On 9/11, there were dozens of drills for terror attacks going on that day. Every drill is a closed movie set. So I want to examine the set. And yeah, I'm going to be as close to the Space Needle as I can be. If I become super convinced something's going to go down, I will chain myself to that thing. I will chain myself to the bottom of the Space Needle. Kind of like that guy, what was his name? Shia LaBeouf. Didn't he like chain himself to a flagpole and he started chanting something about Trump? He will not divide us. Yeah, our Texas. It's interesting. Spielberg's disclosure comes out a day after. It really is. Because the UFOs are supposed to follow the nukes. We kick off mutually assured destruction and the space refs come in. So you got World Cup. You know, it's like the symbolism here kind of correlates. You know, World War and this idea that they have to interrupt, like War of the Worlds. That's why I was comparing the War of the Worlds movie poster to the trophy. And see the alien comes in. So I was thinking, if there were such a nuke like that, that would lead us into a World War III situation, that's when you would expect the angels or the aliens to step in, to intervene. Yeah, but I plan, I'm going to duck and cover. If I can find one of those school desks, I might actually just strap it on my back like a turtle shell. In fact, I had some Bert the Turtle art. If you don't know who Bert the Turtle is, this was used to brainwash children back in the day. Bert and Turtle says, duck and cover, star of the official U.S. civil defense film, Duck and Cover. And then I noticed that in Terminator 2, the playground scene, as you're watching everyone else get incinerated, you see this turtle on the playground. Completely he's like, this is fine. This is fine. He's not bothered by the flames at all. Be like Bert. That's going to be me. because he's got his shell. I'll have my school desk. I added this part. You should have ducked and covered, he's saying to Sarah Connor as she melts like a marshmallow on a campfire. I mean, really gruesome scene. Very well done. Our Texas says, meteors on the East Coast makes you wonder. Well, I called this in advance. I said when T2 comes out, they're blasting the nuke onto the consensus, mass mind. We're all supposed to have the nuke on our minds. And then you have the New Glenn rocket, Blue Origin, blows up, creates a huge mushroom cloud. You have the white liquor explosion in Washington State. You have that fireworks warehouse spectacularly blowing up. Unexplained sonic booms and meteors. So we have been inundated with these types of stories ever since the Terminator 2 hit the screen. Our text says, the Alien movie with Chris Pratt, in the beginning, a portal was opened in the middle of a soccer field during the World Cup, and humans from the future exited. Okay, so there's some stadium connections here as well. We talked about Oblivion yesterday with Tom Cruise, where he lands in a stadium that had been in the vicinity of a nuclear blast, and the goalposts are melted. He's there and a dog shows up, which kind of recalls A Boy and His Dog, a post-nuke apocalypse movie from the 70s. But the stadium nuke situation also has a reference in Dark Knight Rises with some 322 skull and bones symbolism thrown in there. But anyway, so if they're hitting us with sonic booms, if they're throwing mushroom clouds in front of our faces, if we've got the movies with the mushroom cloud, these are all indicators of an incoming hoax. And then you add on to it, James Cameron put 9/11 predictive programming in T2. He put 9/11 predictive programming in the Titanic. On September 11th, he was at the site of the sunken Titanic, which he represented symbolically in his movies, the Twin Towers, that is. So in the Titanic, the movie, when it split in two and sunk, that was foreshadowing the towers. So for him to be at the Titanic on 9/11 is emphasizing that association. So we're talking about 9/11 symbolism in a movie, in two of his movies, and it goes deeper with Cameron for sure. But for that movie to be brought out right now, bringing 9/11 associations, but now throwing in the nuke. And then concurrent with the nuke, we have mushroom clouds all over the place. To me, that's concurrent programming. That's concerted messaging. That's predictive. And not only that, but this is standard operating procedure. We see this all the time. And we're at a point now where the denialists have lost any standing whatsoever, thanks in large part to season 5 of The Boys. That show in particular, like nothing else since maybe The Tempest, I guess, has demonstrated that not only is concurrent programming real and evidence of collusion between government and entertainment, but it happens all the time. And no one has any explanations for it. It's like eerie coincidence, tragic coincidence, ironic coincidence. How about engineered coincidence? You're not allowed to mention intentionality. And I've already concluded, I think, the right answer here, that the reason why we're not supposed to know this is not just that it unravels the world stage as a model and exposes its falsity, but it allows us to name names. Because you can say, oh, it's the Jesuits, it's Israel, it's the Reptoids, it's the Skull and Bones, it's the Phoenicians. There's like a long list of who's behind it. But none of those questions, none of those scapegoats answer the big question as to who did it, like with specificity. It's always vague. We can name names. We can name names in entertainment, government, law enforcement, media. We can name names of people who are directly or 1 degree separated from this interfacing of government, news, and entertainment. And they know it. We can mind map it unequivocally. I run my research, my great deconstruction project, through Grok or ChatGPT, and I'm asking it questions. Not even leading questions. I'm just saying, hey, if this is so, who would necessarily be in the know given such and such? And I'm getting some very precise answers. So the truth is on our side. The consensus is living in a mass delusion. And I'm no longer swayed by peer pressure or the adherence to their system that they want us to like be afraid to go against it. It's like, you know what, I've been off world stage for a long time. I left the world stage behind back in 2019. Daryl says, I pray that you have second thoughts about going to Seattle. Well, why don't you pray for the people who are there? Adu says, those that funded the trip will have blood on their hands. Actually, they wouldn't. I'm pretty sure that I'll be vaporized. I don't think there's going to be any blood. Like, I'm not expecting to get shot. I'm expecting to be, like, incinerated. I'll be a shadow on the wall. There won't be any blood in any meaningful sense. But I have no reason to think that I'll actually die. I mean, if I die, it'll be of natural causes, like getting mugged and stabbed, or drive-by shooting, or somebody puts fentanyl on something. Like, I'll be in Seattle. I'll step on a needle. But no, there's not going to be any psyop death. But again, if there is, I've already accepted it. Big deal. Like, what am I supposed to do? Miss an opportunity of a lifetime? Because think about what we're doing. What we're doing is singular. It's small. It's unique. No one else is going to do this. So we've positioned ourselves to oppose a duopoly and incite a potential marketplace disruption that they will not be able to repair. This is already doable. The problem is getting traction and creating exponential growth. So our phase right now is accelerationism. And how do we accelerate this thing's growth? Easy. We have to be ground zero. We have to be the alternative to the alternative. So the mainstream is going to say this happened. Alt's going to say, no, these guys did it. But we need to be there between mainstream and alt. We need to be there not to discredit the mainstream, but to oppose the alternative. We need to wedge ourselves in there and say, look how they ignored you about Charlie. Look how they ignored you about Butler. Look how they ignored you with regard to, and fill in the blanks. We can show how the entire time you've been following these Pied Pipers, these pre-paved rabbit trails, fed breadcrumb droppers, zero authentic people in the truth community, all compromised, all agents. Of course we have a better position. Adu says, we will fund you to stay put. So what would it cost to keep me from going? And what would I do here? Because if something does go down there, now my authority on the subject is as much as anybody else's. Hey, in my opinion, it's fake. Oh, well, get in line. We're all saying it's fake. And we think Israel faked it. See, the conspiracy theorists will dominate the conversation. If I'm there, boots on the ground, I will be in a position of authority on the subject. I am now a subject matter expert. I am an eyewitness. You know what? If I'm an eyewitness to the next 9/11, that's a slam dunk. That is a major win for the off-world stage perspective. And what we're attempting to do here is scale up the size of the off-world stage. And the reason why we had to quarantine was to make sure that our core was pure, so that we can internally maintain our purity. If somebody comes in with some agenda, I want there to be 50 people with wrenches ready to just, smash them, figuratively speaking, throw them out. We do not want to be infiltrated, and we can't be infiltrated because we put our tenets out there in front. Anybody who's advocating gets outed pretty quickly as such. Plain Dakota says if Tim dies, he gets to meet Jesus. Why did they make so bad? Look, honestly, I'm not interested. I don't want to go to heaven. I've heard about it. Sounds boring. It might be called purgatory for a bit. Very contemplative. It's like purgatory is not really torture from demons like hell. It's just you're not sitting, you're going up a mountain. It's uphill. And all of those who have gotten out of hell but are still feeling somewhat repentant or who are close to hell are more or less self-punishing, carrying rocks on their back going up the hill until they feel sufficiently purified. They're penitents. See you later, Daryl. God bless this chat and the host. Now, I thank you for that. You know, people often say, God bless you. Homeless people tell me, God bless you. I never say, your God is the demiurge and he's imprisoning your soul in ignorance. I don't try to disabuse them of their beliefs because I think that if they're coming from a place of good intention, that's good enough for me. Even if the world religions aren't, in fact, representing any real higher power, just government power. And if there is a power behind the governmental power, it's definitely not on our side. It's the demiurge. So yeah, if you're a mainstream religionist, you might actually be worshiping the architect of the matrix, who may not actually be on your side, but might actually be using you as a matrix battery and needs you to feel pain, suffering, and torment in order to keep this massive machine going. So you might be a loosh cow. And if you are, it's like the cow in the slaughterhouse. Are they going to worship the farmer? Well, they might, because the farmer feeds them, and they think of the farmer as benevolent. But wait until they find out the truth. And that's how I feel like a lot of religions are. You know, they soft sell you on the evil demiurge with this PR front, Jesus, a PR front for what is really nothing more than just raw power with a divine mandate and a bunch of mysticism so you don't see it for what it is. Cruderfist says, yeah, I thought it over. If you go, then don't go up. If you do, they'll arrest you and the fake news will say Tim Osmond is going to bring down the needle. And it would be good press. Well, what do you think about me chaining myself to the thing? Look, I'm thinking here, if they really are going to do something, it's going to happen at night. And they're going to have, like, infrared. There's no way I'm going to get close, even with a press pass. And who knows, maybe they'll kidnap me, make me sign an NDA, put me in a crisis actor role, drug me, and I'll wake up in New Zealand, in Valhalla, and I go snorkeling with Charlie Kirk, who doesn't have a neck scar, interestingly. But if they do it, I imagine it's going to be super early in the morning, and I think this might be a reference to Sleepless in Seattle. Because if it happens in the middle of the night, imagine how disruptive that is. It's not like 9/11 where at least you had time for breakfast. No, like this is like middle of the night. I think it's a Sunday night. And now everyone's awake all night and their power's off, just like in that movie How It Ends. So everything's a blackout. Everyone's panicking. Everyone imagines the worst. The special effects are being promulgated by selected viewpoints, cameras, or maybe even prefabricated footage, likely directed by Christopher Nolan. Like, I think Christopher Nolan will be the person that I give all the credit to for whatever they pull off mushroom cloud-wise. So it'll be a day or two before we get a handle on it. In fact, they'll probably cancel flights. And that's why I said I'm not going to be flying back. I have a one-way ticket. And I have a one-way ticket not because I think I'm going to be nuked, but because I plan to drive back. And if I do fly, we'll see. I plan to drive back, but I also thought if they do something, aren't they going to shut down airplanes? I mean, airlines? We're talking about a major disruption. I know we're being flippant about it, like it's another episode in a soap opera. But no, what we're talking about here is a globally significant transformative psyop, one for the history books, that will disrupt our systems more than anything before. This will be like 9/11 times COVID-19. Co says, bring your M40 gas mask just in case. They may use some kind of obscuring fog. Like, in my opinion, 9/11, all the smoke, quote unquote, I think that was smog generators or fog generators. Same thing. The unit I was a part of, my first MOS, 54 Bravo, we used the smoke generators at Fort Bliss. And basically, these things allow you to create large volumes of impenetrable fog. This is like, it cannot be penetrated by laser, not by eyes, of course. Drones, nothing. It's like pitch black, but it's just pure white. And they use this as concealment for moving personnel. So if you wanted to do some kind of controlled demo or in some way move a lot of people into an area, you could do so under the cover of this type of synthetic fake smoke that looks like it's from a bomb. Plain Dakota says maybe 6:48 a.m. Our Texas says, I forgot the video game World in Conflict depicts a movie where the Soviets are invading Seattle of any other city on the West Coast. So the script here, as far as the meta script, and when I say meta script, what are we referencing? Well, we're referencing psyops and movies that are all connected to this general theme. Movies and also video games. Video games are huge in this. And there does seem to be this recurring theme of Russia being connected to it. And right now, one of the big stories is that Candace Owens is in Russia. She's in their state media. And I said, it makes sense because they're going to want to put the blame on the woke right if it's a domestic violent extremist thing. And having these woke right figureheads, think about it, the most popular podcaster on the internet is woke right conspiracy theorist Candace Owens. And here she is in Russia associating with Alexander Dugin, who's made the case that the West is the Antichrist and needs to fall, even if it means that they need to work with Iran. So this Russia far-right collusion fits in with Hunt for Red October, and it explains also the idea of the Turner Diaries. You know, how did the white nationalist fringe groups get their hands on the nukes? So that's all built into it. And I think the movie, The Odyssey, again, Christopher Nolan, who did the Oppenheimer, I think the very idea of that one coming out after makes sense, because Poseidon, the sea god, the rage of Poseidon against Odysseus. And speaking of Odysseus, PewDiePie, you know, major live streamer presence. PewDiePie is releasing some kind of open source or free AI to the world that doesn't have any rate limitations, and it's called Odysseus. So Odysseus from the Odyssey is the one who came up with the idea of using a Trojan horse to infiltrate the enemy's city and then attack it from within. So when we have Odyssey, Odysseus as a storyline here, it brings the idea of a smuggled weapon. And there's these two PSYOP operatives, Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes, who were talking about a couple of weeks ago how there's been a Trojan, that Trump is a Trojan horse, and there's already a nuke that's being smuggled into Chicago or New York. So we've had this theme. And then I saw this movie poster on Empire magazine, and on the EMP, it had this horse superimposed over it, the dark Trojan horse from the upcoming the Odyssey movie. They showed the horse, and I was thinking, interesting, the horse, EMP, again, electromagnetic pulse. Adu says, any signs the programming they'll take London, Europe, or non-US multiple cities? That's a very good question. I've seen enough to suggest that it's both DC and Seattle. It could even be, like, it could be multiple. I mean, look how 9/11 was. It's a sort of a decentralized attack, multiple locations. So I'm not quite sure, but I think DC is in the cards as well. And leaning into season 5 of The Boys, the Homelander loses his power when he's blasted, like an EMP. Just like the Wizard of Oz loses his power at the end of Wicked when she EMPs the Emerald City. I think it's really bizarre that the director of, or rather the writer of Age of Disclosure is the writer of Snake Eyes. And he's on Steven Spielberg the other day, and they're talking about the timing of it coming out. Whenever these guys talk about timing, like the director of The Boys was on an article in the Rolling Stones talking about how their timing has been on point. It's like we're not talking about timing here, just like being on point or being prescient. No, we're talking about precision, scheduling, planning, and coordination. But as far as anything else, no, I don't think I've seen enough to suggest that it's going to be anywhere else. It looks like it's a domestic 9/11. It looks like it entails elements of either far right or even far left. Because there's a point where, this political horseshoe thing is kind of true, where they both seem to be against the same idea of oligarchs. So it's somewhat ambiguous. And I think the power grid narrative, which has been built into all of this thing, might also correlate strongly with the newly agitated angst against AI data centers. But anyway, appreciate the concern of those of you who think that I'm going to get nuked. And I wish I could take it more seriously, but I can't. I really am not concerned. People today, I put this in the very beginning, people are kneeling for Howard Novak, the kid who was stabbed and then died under police care. And we shared this picture yesterday, a viral image, an altered image from the video, where they clearly depict him as Jesus being crucified by demons. Well, now they're kneeling for this martyr. I'm just pointing it out here. The martyr symbolism has been attached to a character who died back in December of 2025. So, is that relevant? The guy just got, the killer just got his death sentence or his life sentence, but the fact of it is, it's engineered outrage. This is not organic outrage. If they're just now getting mad about it as Anthony Carmelo goes to court, the timing of it's just too conspicuous for me to think it's organic. And now people are doing a viral kneeling trend, which is just virtue signaling. So yeah, virtue signaling is huge when it comes to these types of events. And then if you don't display your virtue, you're against the cause. So kneeling for this Howard Novak kid, kneeling for George Floyd, it's like wearing an AIDS ribbon and then looking at people who don't have the AIDS ribbon as your moral inferiors. Did you kneel for Henry? Did you save the children? It's like, give me a break. None of you are saviors. By you, I mean none of these people who are virtue signaling. The kneeling thing, what are they kneeling for? The person's going to jail. They're kneeling because it's being contextualized as race war. Copacetic says, if anything happens, no doubt they will be deployed. You could arm. Oh, wait. Army, you're right. Major army base. Yeah, that's true. It should get interesting regardless. But so on the off chance that something happens, I'm going to stay there as long as I can, whether I'm locked down or not, until it's just no longer feasible. So that's the reason why I'm a little vague about how long I'm staying. It's because I don't know. Like reasonably, it's logical to expect nothing will happen more likely than anything. Just given the fact that even though we have all this buildup, the exact date thing is really just a matter of at this point, it makes a lot of sense, but you have to see my basis for it. There's too much to ignore though, because it does fit a pattern. Remember, we did call out 311 Ground Zero Seattle accurately days before with specificity. So given our past precedent of using this as a predictive model, it only makes sense. And again, that's why I'm going to be there. This could be a great launching point for the off-world stage perspective. Duet Celeste says nukes are fake. And I don't look. I think Jurassic Liars agrees on that point, but he seems to think they might do something else. Like even though they won't do a nuke, I'm still gonna get carpet bombed or something. I'm still gonna get some kind of munitions thrown my way. And if that's what it takes to take me out, like I said, I accept my fate. And then we have this. If you haven't seen these bizarre commercials, the Chick-a-Boom McDonald's ads at the same time as as the Economist with the soccer ball getting kicked, and the soccer ball is the earth. All these commercials have people blowing up, happy, driving around, walking. They take a bite and everything blows up. Again, we're not cherry picking. We're looking at the most popular advertising campaigns, the most popular movies, the things that are being force memed into consensus awareness. And one of the latest things is this hideous ad campaign, which seems to foreshadow a lot of innocent people getting blown to smithereens. All right, I'll see you all in Discord. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for the channel support. And I will be working on that video. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you'll be first to know when it's ready to be looked at. And I am going to be keeping it for members only until I leave. And once I'm en route, I'll make these things public so that we can, very easily explain our